the first story that I wanted to talk about today is it's kind of sad that we're talking about this on like we're talking about good news around Bitcoin on a day when it was one of the worst days in Bitcoin and in the stock market for that matter in a really long time. So usually we do this show on Thursdays, but because of scheduling conflicts, I had to push it back to Friday. And I'm not sure if you guys watched the market today, but I mean, Bitcoin is still at like 95K ish at the time of recording this, but it feels like it might as well be at 9,500, judging by the mood on X and just, in our group chats and stuff like that. So before we jump into the good news around Bitcoin, I actually just wanted to pass this question off to you guys. Like, what do you guys think is like, the issue, right? Because it seems like we've been getting nothing but good news in Bitcoin for a while, but like, why is just the market not reacting, and why is it like just why is everything sucky? Is basically what I'm trying to say. But just a quick few minutes, and then we'll jump into the good news. But let's get the ugly news out of the way first.
I feel like at this point it's being artificially kept low. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. It's like there's been a lot of good news, and there has been a lot of I get the sense there's been a lot of actions to being made to encourage real what's the word? Retail investors to sell stuff and allow the institutional investors to scoop up all of the stuff that they're selling. So I think that's a big part of it, is that it's just that this is kind of being treated like a consolidation period for the institutions. They're building their bags before they want it to be running more so. And I think that it's just been that we haven't really had any big catalysts that have like flipped the script where it's like to the point where it's been moving up too rapidly for them to keep it low. So I think it's just been kind of like they can kind of like the institutions can reduce the amount that's going through to a larger extent when there's less volume. Whereas once there is sufficient volume, they can't really do anything. So I think that we're kind of just been in a period where there hasn't been sufficient actual volume. There's just been a lot of good news without any major crazy buys going on. Like, for example, like the SBRs haven't gone through yet. And there's like, a significant number of other items where it's like it's looking good, but it's not actually materialized in terms of significant buying yet. And I think the part of that is also like when we think about like some of the news we've gotten, like for example, like BMO and other major banks buying Bitcoin ETFs. I think that it's very much just an effort going on to shake out as many retail investors and have institutions pick up those shares at a lower price. And since the institutions, they're smarter than the average retail investor, because they obviously have more information, so they can kind of play this system a lot more efficiently than you or I can, if that makes sense. So and they can use that to ensure that they are getting a better rate than they may otherwise have been. And they also have other avenues to purchase Bitcoin through that you or I don't have access to, that wouldn't affect the price to the same extent. So they can do buys without necessarily affecting the price to the extent that, 1 million people buying Bitcoin all at once would. So I think we're basically just waiting for the next big major catalyst. I don't know if that'll what format that'll come in, but maybe it'll be the Fed, maybe it'll be something else, but I think we're kind of just in a holding period for now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the price like floor for Bitcoin was kind of hovering in that 60,000 range. The ceiling was like 74 before Trump got elected. So I think that like the bump we got and the euphoria we got up until like close to 200 109,000 or whatever has been the current peak just reflects that the like I guess like there was like a soft ban on Bitcoin under the Biden administration. That's how I like to describe it, at least. And I think that just reflects that that's gone. So we have a new floor. I think that the bullish news of a Bitcoin friendly administration is mostly priced in. Yes, there's going to be buying pressure when the United States like potentially builds a Bitcoin stockpile. It's not clear if the Bitcoin stockpile will actually be new purchases, but rather just take all the confiscated Bitcoin and hold on to it. I agree with Tristan that like market makers are able to smooth out price action when like big buyers are jumping in. They're able to do scheduled buys, and there's a lot of like ways that market makers can facilitate these big buys without messing with the market too much. And I think that like a lot of the volatility just gets smoothed out naturally when like an asset becomes an asset that institutional buyers get interested in it. But I think overall, it's just a consolidation. Like something has to cause consolidation, and this is where we are now. Like we had our big bump in November. It's been stalled out. I feel like any day now we're gonna like break through our resistance at around 108, 109. Don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but I think it's just normal consolidation. And I think a lot of the news since Jerome Powell's most recent meetings has created a lot of uncertainty in the market about how much liquidity is going to get pumped in. So I think that's a lot of market action that we're seeing across the board right now, especially the risk assets and what's going on with the 10-year yields is actually very much just related to the job owning that Jerome Powell has been doing for the last 3 or 4 years and tightening. He doesn't want to like make the market too bullish on news that they're going to end quantitative easing soon and all that stuff. So I think those kind of catalysts, like the actual macroeconomic catalysts, like the end of quantitative easing and expansionary monetary policy, is obviously going to help Bitcoin. But like that's just not. We don't know when M2 money expansion is going to happen. There's a lot of unknowns there, and I think that Jerome Powell is doing his hardest to actually like keep uh, the market from getting too hot because he is talking about slowing down rate cuts all of a sudden. I think that was the market didn't really like that news that they received in January, and I think that we're actually just seeing the market work it out. I think we're just in a normal liquidity cycle and a normal consolidation period, and I think that when liquidity returns to risk assets, Bitcoin is going to be one of the assets that benefits most from it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I don't have too much to add because I think you guys hit on most of what I was going to talk about, anyways. And maybe I'll just talk about one thing that I actually forgot to add it to the docket. But I was showing Tristan this, and he would have seen it a bit before as well, where there's the Bitcoin cycle being compared to previous cycles, and there's different ways you can compare it. If you start from like the halving, or if you start from the top of the cycle, or if you start from the bottom of the cycle. So I think if you click on the one that's like the bottom of the cycle and it compares the ROI of Bitcoin, we're actually tracking the 2017 cycles pretty well still. I know like it seems like Bitcoin is doing horribly, like it seems like it's gone nowhere, but keep in mind we did rise from like around the 60K range to 100K really quickly within a matter of like a month or two after the Trump win, after the Trump election, right? So stuff like that, it can happen really fast. And then also if you look at the 2017 cycle, I'll pull up a chart a little bit later, and I'll put it in post here. We're still kind of tracking that, and if we continue to follow that cycle, then it appears that we'll start to go up like in a massive way in the coming 2-3 months from now. So yeah, until that happens, I predict that we're probably going to chop around for a while. And I think February, it's been a historically strong month for the post-halving year of a cycle. So like, 2017, 2021, and then now 2025. Historically, it's been strong, but in 2025, it has not been strong. And yeah, I just think maybe February is kind of a toss away month because of various reasons that you guys described, like, Jay Powell being hawkish and, the Trump tariff threats and all that stuff. So it's like a special circumstance, but I feel like we will still somewhat eventually track the 2017 cycle. And if that happens, that might even be a better case, right? Because you'd want to follow the 2017 cycle more than the 2021 cycle, because the 2017 cycle, you got a nice long and clean peak, right? Like a nice long clean bull run, as opposed to 2021. It was a lot more choppy, and we had a double peak and stuff like that. I just think that in the end, if we can get something like a 2017 cycle, I know we're probably not going to track it 1-to-1 for the whole cycle, because if we do, then Bitcoin hit like $2 million by the end of this year, which I don't think is going to happen. It might happen, but I don't think it's very likely. But still, it doesn't have to hit 2 million, right? If it hits 500,000, then we'll all be chilling on a beach in some Caribbean island. Sunil, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add another factor. I think this is a Cold War between Trump and Jerome Powell about interest rates, where Trump is saying drop rates now and kind of using his bully pulpit. I think Powell, I don't know. I think a lot of his current language around keeping things tighter is mostly performative. I think the Trump's going to win this Cold War, and I think interest rates are going to drop a lot faster than most people expect them to. That's just my speculation. I don't have any evidence to prove it, but I do really feel like we're going to get a lot more rate cuts than people are expecting.
That would be nice, because if we're going down because we're pricing in less rate cuts than we were expecting, if all of a sudden that reverses, then I feel like we're going to see kind of the opposite of what we've been seeing for the past like 3 months, which is, just Bitcoin grinding and going nowhere. If it really does get priced in that we're going to get more rate cuts than we were expecting, then I think that's going to really kickstart the Bitcoin bull run for reals. And yeah, actually talking about the Bitcoin bull run, we've talked about several ideas of what could be the catalyst that really starts the bull run. I just named one like 10 seconds ago, which is, Jay Powell, the Fed, if they become more dovish and stuff like that, more rate cuts. But there's also another thing that I wanted to talk about, which I think could also be the spark that ignites the powder keg, which is the strategic Bitcoin reserve. But I'm not talking about the national strategic Bitcoin reserve. I'm talking about the state strategic national reserve within each US state. So if you guys look at this, I got this from Bitcoin Laws. They have a great website and X channel, so go follow them if you haven't already on X. But basically, these guys, they put together a nice visual representation of all the states that have a Bitcoin strategic reserve bill that is in progress. And I already hear people complaining, so I got to explain this every time. A lot of these bills are introduced as digital asset bills and don't mention the word Bitcoin. So people get angry and they're like, oh, you're just lumping in some random like meme coin or like, shit coin bill and calling it a Bitcoin strategic reserve. But you haven't read into the fine print, right? So the fine print says, and they're all worded similarly. And this is credit to Dennis Porter, who's like one of the lobbyists for Bitcoin, who's pushing all these and pioneered the language. So the way that these digital asset bills are set up is that the market capitalization of whatever coin that they're investing in, it has to be over a certain amount for the duration of the past 12 months, the past year. And if you see this one, so this is the latest one. This is details about a bill in Iowa for a strategic Bitcoin reserve or digital asset reserve. But you can see that is highlighted that the market capitalization of that digital asset has to be over $750 billion over the past year. And only Bitcoin fits that bill, right? Because Ethereum's market cap is, I don't think it even is $750 billion now, never mind, averaging that over the course of the previous year. So Bitcoin is the only one. They structured it this way because the term digital assets, it goes over a lot easier than saying Bitcoin, right? Because among politicians, and most of the politicians in the US are boomers and older people, let's just say, and among the older generation, they might get intimidated hearing Bitcoin because a lot of people have a negative connotation to that. But if you say digital assets, that sounds more technology related, and although it could be kind of daunting to some people as well, but it's harder to go against a digital asset bill because you might get framed as being anti-innovation. Like, you're more likely to be called anti-innovation if you go against a digital asset bill. So let me just clear the air about that. That's why, like, these SBR, strategic Bitcoin reserve bills, they're structured as digital asset bills, but they're actually Bitcoin only. But anyways, so Iowa has filed one, and you can see that if you look at the chart on the left, some states have more than one. And the reason for that is because some states have a House bill and a Senate bill, whereas some, they just have one bill. But you can see that UT, which is Utah, is the farthest along. They basically just has the Senate, the Utah State Senate just has to vote on it, and then the governor has to sign it, and then that's it. But if we see other ones, there's other ones that have just been introduced, so you can see the progress on it. I just talked about the Iowa one in detail. And if you look at the map down here, so there's 20 states that have 26 live SBR bills at the moment in the United States. Some of them did not pass. I know, like, Pennsylvania tried one and Wyoming tried one, and then those two unfortunately did not, was rejected. But the 20 and again, the reason why it's 20 states with 26 bills is because some states have more than one going at the same time. So this is an idea. This is my idea of one potential catalyst that could ignite the next big bull run, because these states have a lot of money too, and if they just allocate like, I don't know, 10 billion, 5 billion, or like even 1 billion into Bitcoin, that's a lot of Bitcoin, right? And then that's a lot of buying pressure. And this is like, imagine MicroStrategy buys like a few hundred million to over $1 billion, and this weekend they might buy 2 billion because they just did another bond raise. But usually they buy like a few $100 million per week, and they've been doing that consistently. Imagine that you have, I don't know, 20 states, right? So 20 MicroStrategies worth of buying pressure every week instead of one MicroStrategy, right? So technically it's 21, because if it's all enacted, you have 20 states plus MicroStrategy. So that's a lot of buying pressure that could be potentially coming in, and this state SBR thing might turn out to be more important than the national one, because I know everyone's focusing on the national one, but I think not enough people are paying attention to the state bills, the individual state bills, and I think that might be a mistake, because I think that this is something that's really exciting and that you should be paying attention to, because this has the potential to be the catalyst that really gets the bull run going. So I'm not sure what you guys think of it. Do you guys think I'm overhyping this? Is this a bigger deal? Is this a bigger or lesser deal than I'm making it sound like? Or do you generally agree with what I said? So I'm happy to hear your thoughts, whoever wants to go first.
I mean, I think that the states getting on the Bitcoin standard is very bullish, because I would be less worried about, I don't know what the political dynamics are of every state. I couldn't really tell you, but I just think that there's a higher chance of political gridlock in Washington, D.C. and getting like 60 votes in the Senate to pass a Bitcoin strategic reserve would be a lot more difficult than passing it at the state level. So I think that I'm more bullish on it, just that I think that this could create more of a FOMO rally, while if the federal government does it in the US, then I think that it's more likely to be like a stockpile where they just take the confiscated Bitcoin and just move it over from like the Justice Department to the Treasury, or I don't know if the Treasury or the Fed would hold it, but I guess it's the Treasury that would hold the Bitcoin. I just think the political gridlock is more of a factor at the federal level than it is at the state level. I also think that this is a really interesting model for just government finances, because of like subordinate regional governments start to hold strategic reserve assets, and that becomes a part of their balance sheet that could change government budgeting. This could be a very revolutionary thing to happen in governance. And I also think that there's an inevitability. I'm disappointed that not one person in this country is talking about it, but there's an inevitability that Canadian provinces can use this as a funding mechanism and as a mechanism for saving their like provincial wealth. So I just think the economics of it's very interesting. Uh, can I suggest some catalysts that I think are coming online on top of this, or do you want? Yeah. So the other catalyst that's kind of been talked about is American banks holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, which will require some legislative changes. I think that's actually more likely to get passed than the National Strategic Reserve in a short period of time too. So I'm even more. I'm bullish. I'm very bullish about that. I think there's a lot of bullishness around MicroStrategy and how it can change. It can continuously and gradually change the institutional conversation around Bitcoin. Like the FOMO of corporate treasuries jumping on Bitcoin is something that could be a major catalyst in the next few months. And then I'll just make my prediction of what the next big corporate catalyst will be. And the one that creates the most FOMO is I have a feeling that Meta is going to do it. I think that Mark Zuckerberg is a Bitcoiner, and I think he has the voting power that's similar to Michael Saylor, that he can get this through if he decides to do it. And I kind of have a feeling that Meta is going to be the next big mega cap tech company to start a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And this is like really bullish, because when you consider the balance sheet, like how much money the company like Meta, how much cash a company like Meta has on its balance sheet, they wouldn't even have to do what MicroStrategy is doing. They could just devote like 5 to 10% of their cash pile to Bitcoin in a very short period of time and be one of the biggest holders in the world. So I kind of have a feeling that's going to be the biggest catalyst coming up in the next little while.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. I mean, Meta's it would be great because they could integrate maybe Bitcoin and Lightning into Messenger. I know Messenger is one of, at least for me, is my most used messaging app that has replaced text messaging for me. And the reason why is just because quite frankly, it's the best messaging platform. And I hate to say it because, like, you know, I have mixed feelings about Zuckerberg. Maybe he's like improved a little in my opinion now, especially with his latest, I don't know, pivot. But in the past, I used to really dislike Zuckerberg. But I still have to admit, even back then, that the Facebook Messenger is miles ahead of anything else that's on the market, just because it's so multi-platform and it has, you know, kind of advanced features for its time, right? It was like one of the first to you know, includes things like, you know, stickers and GIFs and all this stuff. At least, like, in my opinion, it probably wasn't the first, but I just remember it was like pretty revolutionary when those things were brought to Messenger. Maybe I'm revealing my age a little, but yeah. Anyways, it would be great if Meta can add like Bitcoin Lightning into Messenger, right? Can just zap people using Messenger like Bitcoin instantly. Kristen, your thoughts on everything we talked about. What do you think the big catalyst is? The state SBR thing I mentioned, or do you have your own suggestions as well as to what you think might kick off this bull market?
Yeah. So I think the state SBRs could be a potential contributor to like catalyst event. I'm not sure if they will be the specific one, given that basically only Utah is anywhere close to getting it done. The other ones are significantly further behind, and there's no guarantee any of them are going to pass it. There's no guarantee that Utah is going to pass it at the end of the day. I mean, I think it's likely they will, but again, I'm just saying. So I'm not sure if the SBR specifically will be. I think that probably the Fed is really going to be a big contributing factor for whether or not we're going to get a big catalyst event. So, for example, like if the Fed flips monetary policy on and starts cutting rates again, I think that we're going to see a significantly larger impact on stocks and Bitcoin, but than the SBRs. Now, I mean, maybe the SBRs would because at the same time with the SBRs, like I don't think that it's going to pass on like a Monday, and they're going to be buying Bitcoin on the Tuesday either. So the news might be really bullish, but at this point, I'm not sure to what extent the dumb money is able to move the markets on these on Bitcoin, etc., compared to the institutions and big buys from like the actual SBR creation, right? So like I would say that Utah actually buying a bunch of Bitcoin would be more likely to move the mark than a bunch of people seeing that Utah has allowed themselves to buy it, if that makes sense. So and then with the Fed, like every time the monetary policy gets reduced, we basically see like the interest rate, we basically continually see a big move to risk assets, and Bitcoin is considered a risk asset. So at this point, that's why we saw such a big shake when they stopped cutting rates back in January or December, I guess it was. So on that front, I'm not sure if that's going to be the what specifically of those is going to be the next catalyst, if either. But I'm hoping that it's going to be upcoming soon. And with regards to what will be the next catalyst, I don't really have that many good theories on what it's going to be. I kind of feel like it's going to be something out of left field, right? Like Trump is just like, it's Tuesday and I like Bitcoin, and tweets that, and Bitcoin just skyrockets or something. It's like, crazy stuff like that happens all the time. And in this market, like every time Trump basically does anything, the market seems to move 10% in either direction. So I think that fact alone means that the likelihood that there's a catalyst that none of us just see coming is a lot higher. And I mean, heck, we didn't see there was a Ethereum theft today or yesterday or something like that, and we didn't see that coming. I didn't wake up this morning and be like, wow, Bitcoin is at 90, 98, 99, is like shit's going back up. And then out of left wing, someone stole $1.4 billion of Ethereum. Oh no. Congratulations, you got some trash.
I heard it was North Korea, and like I've seen people post on X that North Korea is now the first nation in the world to establish a strategic Ethereum reserve ahead of everyone, ahead of the US, ahead of China. 1.4 billion, that's a sizable bag too.
Maybe they'll swap it for Bitcoin if they're smart.